Hi, welcome back. In today's video, we would like to talk about two important topics in classes. The first one is constructors and the second one is destructors. So what is a constructor? A constructor automatically initializes object attributes when an object is created. So it reduces manual work by ensuring every object starts with a predefined state, and it helps in organizing code by keeping object creation structured. Whenever we want to use constructors, we need to use this code, okay? Underscore, underscore, init, underscore, underscore. So this is how we create constructors inside a class. And destructors, whenever we want to create them inside the class, we need to have underscore, underscore, del, and then underscore, underscore. So this is how the destructor is created in a class. Basically, destructors are also used to clean up resources, for example, files or database connections, etc. And it ensures efficient memory management. So in order to create an example for you here, we have brought this example for you. We're going to give you a specific example in which you can learn about constructors like here and destructors like here, okay? So in this example, we are having a class called person. We are creating the class using the class keyword, and the name of the class is afterwards. So person is the name of the class. Then we are having column. Here is my constructor. Here is a function called introduce, and here is my destructors. Okay. And then here in the main part, we are creating an object of the person class. So in order to create an object, we are going to name it something, for example, person1, this is the name of my object here, equals, then we type down the name of the class, which is person, then we are passing two arguments. Why am I passing two arguments here? The reason is because of the constructor. So constructor has a self argument that is always there. So the other arguments are the arguments that we need to use when we are creating an object. So when we are creating an object from the person class and we are having a constructor, now we are having two arguments that we need to declare them when we are creating an object. This self is always there and we need to consider having it. Apart from that, we are having two arguments, name and age. So why I'm passing two arguments here? Because my constructor requires two arguments. So I'm creating an object called person1, and in order to create an object in Python for the person class, for example, I type down the name of my object, for example, person1 equals person, which is the name of the class, and in parentheses, we type down the arguments. So in this case, we need two arguments. There are cases when we need to have one argument or five arguments. It depends on our constructor. So when an object is created, automatically the constructor is called. So this is one of the features. So automatically the constructor is called, and then using this argument, we are initializing these two attributes. So these two attributes are two variables of the person class, okay? And we use this first argument, which we call self, to fill these two variables. So these two variables are name and age. In order to assign some value to them, we use self.name and self.age, and these arguments that are passed when we are creating an object, and the constructor is automatically called, these two values are going to be assigned to the self.name and self.age. So let me review it one more time. I am creating an object called person1. In order to create that, we need to equal it to the name of the class person, and in parentheses we are going to have two arguments. Why two arguments? Because I have a constructor, and apart from self I'm having two other arguments. So for these two arguments we are going to have two arguments here when creating an object. So when the object is created, automatically the constructor is called. And these two arguments that are passed for this constructor, automatically name and age, are assigned to name and age. Okay, and they are public variable. In later videos in this section, we are going to talk about other variables as well. So we are having public variables, protected variables, and private variables. We're going to talk about them. So just know that there are three types of variables, and in this video, we're talking about public variables, and we're going to comprehensively review all of them and compare their features. So this name Alice is assigned to self.name, and number 30, which is the age here, is assigned to self.age. So here the constructor is called with the creation of an object, and we are now initializing our attributes that are name and age with the object that is created with these two arguments, Alice and 30. So now we are having an object called person1, and person1 information is stored. Alice is the name and 30 is the age. Okay. After that, we can use that object to call the functions that are inside this class. So I type down the name of the object and then dot and then the name of the function. And when we are calling the function here, I call the function introduce. So this is the name of the function. And as you see, we pass no arguments here when calling the function, because there, apart from self, there is no other arguments here in the function. And we said that by default the self is there. So self is there and no other arguments apart from self is there. Therefore, we call the function with no other argument. So the introduce function is called. When this function is called, basically it is going to print the information of that we stored in the person1 object. Okay. So it is going to show this message. Hi, I am, then put the name of the person, which is Alice, because we assigned these two, let's say, arguments for the first object using the self name and then self age. So I am, then Alice is shown because self.name is used, and I am also the age of the Alice is shown 30 years old here. So because I'm calling the function introduce using the first object, it is going to print the information regarding the first person, because the first person information is assigned as arguments for the first object. So if I have, for example, person2 equals person, and then here I type down Reza, and then the age is 33. So here, if I am creating a new object, okay, now I'm creating a second object with the new information. So the name is Reza and the age is 33, for example. Then I use this object, this new created object, and call the introduce function. Now if I run this code is going to, let me comment this part. First, call the introduce function using the first object, which holds the information of Alice. Then when I use the second object to call the introduce function, this function is going to print the information that are stored for Reza. So let me run the code. So when I run the code, first of all, we say constructor called, creating an object. So we mentioned that when we are creating an object, automatically a constructor is called. When this constructor is called, this message is shown. Then these two arguments that we passed to this constructor are assigned to the attributes name and age. Okay, so constructor called creating an object. So constructor called creating an object. Then we call the introduce function. So introduce function says, hi, I am Alice and I am 30 years old. So this is the introduce function is printing the information of Alice because we are using the first object to call the function. Then I'm creating the second object. It says again, constructor called creating an object. So this message is again shown. And then the arguments that are passed to this constructor, which are Reza and 33, are assigned to the attributes self.name and self.age. And then the introduce function is called. When the introduce function is called, the information of Reza is being printed out here because we are using self.name and self.age here. And we are using the second object, therefore it is going to talk about the Reza information because the second object was for Reza. So you see, hi, I am Reza and I am 33 years old. So this is how actually we can have one function, but we can have one class and one function, but we are having different objects and each object holds information of a specific person. After doing all of these things, we are going to delete our let me now add this one, our objects. Okay, and when we are going to delete our objects, the destructor will be called again automatically, and we need to delete them for efficient memory management. So when I delete person 1 and person 2, this constructor that the name is underscore underscore del underscore underscore is called, and this message is shown. So destructor called deleting object of first Alice and then Reza, because this destructor is going to be called 2 times because we are having two objects that are being deleted. So one time for person 1, which is Alice, and one time for person 2, which is Reza. So when I run the code one more time, it says constructor called, then the information of Alice, constructor called, the information of Reza, and then it says destructor called, deleting object of Alice and deleting object of Reza. So these two objects are being deleted, therefore we make sure that the efficient memory management is performed in our code. So to summarize, a constructor called automatically when an object is created, and it is used to initialize our attributes, and it uses self to define object specific attributes. So this is a summary of the constructor, and for destructors, they are called automatically when an object is deleted, and they can be used for cleanup tasks, for example, for closing files, releasing resources, etc. So in this video, we learned first of all how to create an object of a class, then how the constructor would work, and also how the destructor would work and why they are necessary to be used. And also we learned that if we are calling this function with two different objects, it can show two different information for us. For example, we called the introduce function with the first object, and it was going to show the Alice information. Then we call the function the second time with the second object, which was holding the information of Reza. Then this introduce function was printing out the information of Reza. So this is a summary of how we can use constructors and destructors to increase the efficiency of the memory management and also help us to automatically initialize our attributes. Thank you for watching.